Lessons learned from Japan's World War II experience. Strategy, consequences, and the road to reconciliation. Japan's trajectory through World War II, marked by early triumphs, devastating defeats, and a post-war revival, offers a multitude of lessons that resonate far beyond the 1940s. From a strategic standpoint, the empire showcased how a nation's hunger for resources and overconfidence in its own ethos can spark catastrophic miscalculations. Politically, Japan's wartime government revealed the perils of a weak civilian leadership overshadowed by militarists. Morally, events ranging from Nanjing to Unit 731 underscored the profound damage wreaked when ideology and racism override humanitarian values. In the ensuing decades, Japan's path to reconciliation, both domestic, as it reimagined itself under a pacifist constitution, and international, as it struggled to address wartime atrocities, underscored that the echoes of total war often endure long after the shooting stops. To this day, controversies over historical memory and apologies highlight the complex legacy of Japan's World War II experience. One pivotal lesson is how quickly a seemingly unstoppable advance can unravel if anchored more in audacity than in sustainable planning. Japan's conquests in Southeast Asia, fueled by the surprise strike on Pearl Harbor, took the Allies aback in late 1941 and early 1942. That boldness, however, masked deep vulnerabilities. The Imperial Navy's victory at Pearl Harbor, for instance, failed to eliminate the US aircraft carriers, which later proved decisive at Midway. Moreover, Japan lacked the industrial capacity to replace lost carriers, planes, and veteran pilots. Its reliance on imports of fuel and raw materials meant that once Allied submarines targeted shipping routes, a crippling shortage of resources developed. This precarious strategy was predicated on swift, conclusive blows. Once the war dragged on, Japan's fortunes inevitably plunged. At home, the militarist government systematically stifled dissent, sidelining moderate politicians who recognized that protracted warfare against resource-rich foes was unsustainable. Political assassinations and the cult of Bushido steered public life toward an unyielding loyalty to the emperor and the military. While some historians see the emperor as a figurehead, others contend he tacitly approved expansionist policies. Regardless, the structure allowed ultra-nationalist generals to dominate policy, prioritizing spiritual fervor over the realities of attrition. By the time the public grasped the true extent of the odds, Japan was locked in a war that demanded staggering sacrifices, including kamikaze missions and civilian suicides on frontline islands. The war's final stages, culminating in atomic bombings, revealed how a rigid sense of honor might lead to nearly suicidal lengths before conceding defeat. Culturally, Japan's World War II conduct illuminates the role of propaganda and enforced belief systems in justifying extreme acts. Many soldiers believed dying for the emperor purified one's soul, rationalizing hopeless charges or self-sacrifice. Similar convictions led to the comfort women system, where the military deemed the exploitation of women from occupied territories a necessity to maintain troop morale. Institutional racism, seeing other Asian peoples as inferior, facilitated atrocities like Nanjing and Bataan. While racism and wartime brutality were not exclusive to Japan, Europe, too, witnessed genocidal horrors. Japan's case underscores how swiftly even a modern nation can devolve into systematic violence once a veneer of moral restraint disappears. In the aftermath, the Allied occupation under General MacArthur orchestrated a dramatic transformation. With the country in ruins, Japan pivoted to a pacifist constitution, dissolving its war machine and reorienting industries for peaceful production. US support during the Korean War catalyzed an economic surge, leading to the so-called Japanese economic miracle. Over a few decades, Japan emerged as a global industrial and technological powerhouse, an extraordinary turnaround from the devastation of 1945. This shift exemplifies how defeat in total war can, under certain geopolitical circumstances, foster a refashioned, prosperous state, provided there is stable leadership, external aid, and a shared will to rebuild. Yet reconciliation, both internal and external, proved far more uneven. While many Japanese citizens embraced pacifism, certain conservative groups downplayed or even denied wrongdoing, fueling diplomatic strains with China, Korea, and other nations once under occupation. Survivors of comfort stations, forced laborers, and power atrocities often felt unrecognized in post-war settlements. The Tokyo trials punished some leaders but left the emperor and numerous participants shielded. Meanwhile, Unit 731's immunity deal, among other controversial decisions, exemplified realpolitik overshadowing victims' quest for justice. Textbook disputes and prime ministerial visits to Yasukuni Shrine, where convicted war criminals are enshrined, still spark protests. These lingering issues show that while a nation may rebuild swiftly, the moral and psychological residue of war crimes can persist across generations. From a broader global perspective, Japan's World War II arc underscores the fragility of peace when economic desperation meets intense nationalism. The quest for resources in Manchuria and Southeast Asia, rationalized by a belief in Japan's divine mission, propelled the empire into a cataclysmic confrontation with the West. Such examples echo in modern conflicts, where resource competition and fervent ideology likewise loom. The near destruction Japan faced by 1945 stands as a testament that no warrior spirit can indefinitely trump a coalition of major powers with superior materiel. Similarly, the grotesque atrocities committed under an ethos of racial supremacy remind us that civilized norms erode rapidly when society places victory above humanity. Still, Japan's post-war rise to economic giant also conveys a hopeful lesson. Transformation is possible, even for a heavily militarized state. Through constitutional revisions, massive social reforms, and careful economic policies, Japan became synonymous with cars, electronics, and high-speed trains rather than Zero fighters and battleships. Its society embraced pacifist ideals, curbing defense spending to a fraction of GDP. Thus, the same country once fixated on conquest came to champion international commerce and soft power cultural exports, from anime to electronics. The tension remains, however, with continued US security guarantees, occasional pushes to revise pacifist clauses, and an aging generation of World War II survivors who feel their experiences are slipping into obscurity. For historians and policymakers alike, the lessons from Japan's World War II experience are multifaceted. They spotlight how resource constraints can drive extreme policy moves, why moral checks on military conduct matter, and how total war can devastate a nation's psyche and infrastructure. They also demonstrate that an enlightened occupation policy, albeit influenced by Cold War politics, can guide a devastated country to stable democracy and rapid economic growth. And importantly, they reveal how a society deals with war guilt, collective memory, and the complexities of apology. No single narrative fully encompasses Japan's shift from empire to pacifist power, but each dimension, strategic, cultural, economic, forms part of the story. Looking to the future, Japan's experiences underscore the significance of frank historical discourse. Without open acknowledgement of past aggressions and sincere efforts to address the legacy of atrocities, wounds can linger. The slow emergence of comfort women testimony, the controversies over textbooks, and the debates around prime ministerial shrine visits all show that unhealed moral rifts are not easily resolved by economic success alone. Reconciliation demands empathy, institutional accountability, and ongoing dialogue. For all the progress since 1945, East Asia still wrestles with the shadow of Japan's wartime actions, proving that decades, even centuries, may be required for genuine healing. Ultimately, Japan's World War II lessons remind us that modernity and militarism can be a volatile mix, that alliances and embargoes can trigger radical moves, and that democracy's fragility can be exposed if popular fervor and authoritarian impulses unite. Yet those same lessons show how a society can rise from the wreckage, forging peace and prosperity through a combination of internal resolve and external support. As the world grapples with new security dilemmas, resource competitions, and ideological rifts, Japan's wartime story stands as both cautionary tale and roadmap for reinvention, highlighting how global realities can quickly shift from expansion to catastrophe, and how determined reconstruction can shape an entirely new national identity. Subscribe to Legends of the Battlefield for more stories of brilliant tactics and legendary leaders.